I have a hobby of skimming Craigslist while drunk. Most of the time, I'll stick to discussion posts for my area. Sometimes I'll check out gigs or for sale, but my favorite category was lost and found. You can learn a lot about your neighbors, based on the things they lose and how hard they try to get things back. I've seen weird posts before. Lost refrigerator, crystal skull, once even a missing prosthetic leg, but missing twin was a horse of a whole different flavor. And it was so casual. There was already a hangover headed my way. So I figured another beer or two wouldn't add much to the damage. At that point, I was already roaring drunk, teetering right on the edge of a blackout, but not quite there yet. After another beer, I made a mistake that ended up costing me a lot. I replied to the Craigslist ad, "Hi, I think I might be your missing twin. How are things?" I'm not sure why I sent that. I remember being bored, fuzzy, and curious. I also remember being so close to closing my laptop and calling it a night. Then the owner of the Craigslist ad replied almost immediately, "I missed you. Oh, we got a live one," I slurred, opening another beer. That was the drink that sent me over the hammered but aware cliff, plummeting down into Wasted Valley. I woke up the next morning with a headache like somebody opened a strip mine behind my eyeballs. There were 26 unread emails in my inbox. I took a leak, then returned to my living room, still in my underwear, and plopped down on the couch with my computer. Heavy curtains kept out painful sunshine. The only light came from the blue glow of my laptop screen. It was uneven bright enough to reveal the bottles and clothes and Chinese takeout boxes scattered around my apartment. I opened the first email. "Twin, where did you go?" My heart crawled up to my throat. The Craigslist weirdo had my email. Did I give him my email address the night before? Sometimes I got a little too trusting when I blacked out. Damn. I opened another email. Then another. All were from the Craigslist poster, and all were some variation of asking me where I went. For some reason, I felt compelled to open all of them. The last message was a single word. Meet. I closed the laptop and rubbed my temple. My hangover was shifting into a higher gear. Shit, so a rando on Craigslist had my email. Not the end of the world, though. My full name was part of the email address. Shit, it was a common name, and I lived in a big city. Should be safe. That's what I kept telling myself all day as I lay curled on the couch, TV droning unwatched behind me. I ordered tacos from DoorDash. I slept. When I checked my computer again, there were another 8 messages. I decided to retire the email address and close the account. I figured the Craiglister was just an oddball. Harmless. It was back to the usual routine after that. My hangover was barely a greasy echo by the time I went to work the following day. Riding on the subway that morning, a strange sensation, little hairs prickling on the back of my neck. Someone was watching me. I scanned the crowded subway car but didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. The sensation of being watched stuck with me until I reached my stop. Then, in a blink, it was gone. Yet the memory lingered with me all through the morning as I sat in my cubicle. I was distracted, unable to work, staring at a blank spreadsheet for an hour. Somehow I made it to lunch. I bolted from the office like a raccoon from a burning dumpster. The moment I left the building, I felt the sensation again. My watcher. I hurried through the city, dodging people on the sidewalk. When there was a gap in the press, I turned to see if I was being followed. A man was standing in the middle of the road, blocking traffic. He was too far away to see clearly, though there was something familiar about him. Cars were honking, but he stood scarecrow still. Then he waved. No matter how many turns I took or intersections I sprinted through, the feeling clung to me. Eventually, I ducked into a grimy pub, nearly slipping on a puddle of unidentified liquid at the door. It was dark in the room. I slid into a corner booth, keeping my eye on the entrance. My hands were shaking. For the first time in my life, I felt hunted. After a few minutes of watching the door without anyone coming in, I let out a breath and slouched into the booth. Maybe I'd lost my watcher. The relief lasted about 20 seconds. That's when I noticed the man leaning against the bar. He was staring at me, smiling. I didn't recognize him at all, and he had a Face ID remember. Watery eyes, a broken nose badly set, and teeth like little gravestone. I realized why he seemed familiar. The stranger was dressed exactly like me. Exactly. Same tan chinos, same blue button-down shirt, same haircut. It was like looking at my reflection in a funhouse mirror. When the man saw I was aware, He picked up 2 beers from the bar, walked over and sat down opposite me in the booth. "Finally found you," he said, voice higher than I expected. "Do I know you?" I was weighing my options, wondering if I should bolt to the door. "Such a joker," the stranger said, letting out a little chuckle. "You've been a bad twin." "I missed you." I leaned back. "Dude, I have no idea who you are." The stranger looked down at the table. "I know this is unusual. I apologize. I'm my brother. ... He passed away a few years back." It really left a hole. You know how they say twins have an extra bond, that they can sense each other? With him gone, that feeling I had my whole life just faded out. Imagine looking up at the sky every night, and all of a sudden there are no more stars and never will be again. Don, single quotes, didn't know what to say. This isn't your problem. I'm sure I'm freaking you out. See, I post those ads as a coping mechanism. Sometimes people play along, and for a moment it's like he's back. That's all I thought this was, but I can see I've upset you. I apologize. The stranger blinked his wet blue eyes and nodded to himself. I was at a bit of a loss. "I think maybe this is a misunderstanding," I offered. "I shouldn't have replied to your ad. I came on strong. How about 1 beer? We part ways and I won't bother you again." Some part of my brain, an old part that developed long ago, when we still had to watch the tall grass for hungry eyes, it was warning me to leave. But I was so relieved to find out that my watcher was a sad man, not some monster. What was the harm in 1 drink? I woke up with my cheek pressed against cold concrete. This was the grandmother of all hangovers. I wanted to touch my head to check for a buried axe, but my hands were stuck. Tied behind my back, I was laying on the floor in the dark. "You don't really look much alike," a voice whispered from somewhere nearby. I was awfully depressed to see that. Not twins at all. Not yet. "What this shit?" I mumbled, face a little numb. There was the pop of a light bulb. In the yellow-orange glow, I saw I was in an empty storage unit, the type you'd rent to fill with boxes of junk and old furniture. There were mattresses duct-taped to the walls. A stranger from the bar was standing over me. Light caught on the edge of the straight razor he was unfolding. We were still dressed the same. He leaned down. "If I can't look like you, little twin, maybe we can change things. Rearrange. Trim." I remember screaming for a long time. Mattresses. ... They must have been good soundproofing. No one came looking, no matter how loud I shrieked.
"Oh."
The pain was everywhere. It started at my face, but it lit up every nerve. A scalding electric feeling that left me shaking. I've never tasted so much blood. My last memory inside the storage unit was the stranger sitting down at my feet. He was crying. "Not good enough," he said. "Not even close." Another blackout washed over me, and I prayed I wouldn't wake up. It would be over. This time, when I opened my eyes, I saw a white light. Then a shadow leaned down. I would have screamed if my mouth wasn't full of something soft and dry. "Still with us?" a voice asked. I mumbled, "Don't try talking." The voice continued. "Your mouth, your tongue, there's some damage. But you're safe now. You're in the hospital." I reached for my face. Cotton bandages covered everything from my neck to my scalp. They were wet, my fingers sticking briefly before I pulled them away. I'm still not sure why the stranger stopped cutting me. Maybe he wasn't seeing whatever he hoped to find. So he dumped me outside an ER and disappeared. The doctors tell me I have options. Reconstructive surgery is always evolving, they say, always improving. With time and luck, I might be able to get about 75% back to normal, maybe even 80%. I still don't look when they change the bandages. Eventually I'll have to. For the time being, I like to distract myself. They lent me a laptop, and I've been trying to write, keeping a journal. I'm not sure why I checked Craigslist this morning, but I felt drawn to it. The post was only a few hours old. The location had shifted from downtown to the north side of the city, but the wording was horribly familiar. "Missing twin. Have you seen him? Cash reward." I was scouring the internet for some sort of paying gig. I didn't really care what. Then I came across a post on Craigslist. I had just refreshed the page, and there it was. Someone was looking for a person to come by and feed their pets. I assumed they were going out of town or something, so I contacted them and left my number through email.
Nice.
I got a response immediately in the form of a phone call. The caller was a man who explained to me that he was moving out of town and his parents had cats they wanted fed daily. I gave the man my name so he could run me through a cursory background check, and in about 20 minutes, I was hired. I went there the next morning to get all the instructions and whatnot, and met the man I'd spoken to on the phone. His name was Ben. Ben explained to me that he would no longer be able to care for his parents' cats, and that his parents needed to focus on themselves, so I was being brought on to take care of that. The money would be left on the kitchen table at the end of every week, $200 a week just to feed some cats. I know, right? In addition to that, money for more cat food would be left for me as needed. Then he told me the first thing that I thought was strange. I was to come at exactly 10 a.m. every day and be gone by 10 a.m., and I was to never, under any circumstances, to interact with his parents. He told me that when I'm in their home, they will be in their chairs in the living room, watching television, and that I was not to disturb them, ever. He asked if any of that would be a problem, to which I assured him it wouldn't. He then showed me the area in which the cats eat. There were 4 cats, and where the food was kept. While not rude in the least, he was very adamant that I not explore further in the house, which I promised him wouldn't be a problem. He ushered me outside and showed me where the spare key was in case the door was ever locked, but he told me that was very unlikely to happen. And with that, he expressed his hope that I could be trusted one last time, shook my hand, and told me to be there at 10 a.m. every day starting tomorrow. If I was ever unable to make it, call and leave a message on their home phone, to which he gave me the number. I shook my head and was on my way. The next day came, and I went inside at exactly 10 a.m. I walked into the house, and immediately to my right were Ben's parents, sitting in recliners, facing away from me, watching some kind of game show. I announced my presence, which they ignored, and made my way to the kitchen. I fed the cats bowls and left. This exact same scenario played out countless times over the next few months. 10 a.m., unreturned, hello, feed the cats, leave. On Fridays, I would pick up the small stack of $20 bills from the kitchen table. It was the easiest job I ever had. Then came the inevitable. One day I was running late. I got to the house at 10:08. I entered and apologized to Ben's parents for being late, to which I once again got no response. They just kept sitting in their chairs watching their game show. I went to the kitchen and fed the cats. I looked at my phone, which read 10:11, and walked down the hall towards the front door. When I reached the living room, I jumped and gasped out of shock. Ben's parents were now standing in the dark behind their chairs, completely still, staring directly at me. I apologized for running late and got out of there. Though unnerved, I went back the next day on time, and everything was fine. A few more months went by, of nothing strange, and then came the last day I was there. I got there at 10:03. I wasn't too worried because I knew I could be out before 10:10. The problem came when I was in the kitchen, and I heard someone whisper the words, "Help me." It startled me, and I jumped, looking around for the source of the cry for help. I saw no one around, but I heard it again, and then a third time. I began looking around, before realizing I was running behind. I looked at my phone, and it was 10:10. My heart sank to my stomach. When I looked down the hallway and saw Ben's parents for the first time in the light, they were grossly emaciated and pale, looking completely malnourished. They were essentially walking skeletons. I apologized for taking so long and said I'd be on my way, but they just stood there, blocking the way to the front door. I said I would take the back door, which was located in the kitchen, but when I went to open it, I found that it required a key to open from the inside. Seriously. It was at this point that true panic set in. I looked behind me, and the parents were now about a half a foot away from the entrance to the kitchen. And I had nowhere else to go, except what I presumed was a door to a pantry. They had blank stares across their faces, and their eyes looked as if the life had left them a long time ago. In a last-ditch effort, I went to the door that I thought was the pantry, and was instead met with a staircase leading into a basement, with, of course, no light. As soon as I opened the door, there was a horrid stench that washed over the otherwise clean air I was standing in. I carefully went down the stairs and looked for a window, but they were all nailed shut. I happened to look back up the stairs, and the parents were now standing next to each other at the top of the stairs. It was truly horrifying. I pulled out my phone and called 911, not knowing what else to do. And when I explained my situation, they said they would send a car out immediately and to stay on the phone while they connected me to the unit en route. I ran into the dark basement using my phone as a light, It didn't provide too much illumination since I was in the middle of a call, but it was just enough. There were racks of junk that lined the basement, separating it into almost aisles. I went down to check if any of the windows were possibly loose, like I'd be that lucky. Then I turned around and shined the light in front of me, and I was inches away from the parents' lifeless-looking faces. I let out a scream and ran in the other direction and tripped over something, sending my phone flying from my hand. Of course, it landed face down, so I couldn't find it. I ran back up the stairs and into the kitchen. Looking back and seeing the parents standing at the bottom of the stairs with slight grins on their faces. I ran down the hall to the front door and flung it open, screaming when I saw the cop standing right in front of me. He asked me if I was the one that called as I pushed past him to get outside and told him I was. I looked in the window and saw the parents sitting in their chairs, watching their game show. I explained that these crazy old people had trapped me in their house and were chasing me around. The cop went in to talk to the parents and look around while I sat in the cop car. He came back out about 5 minutes later and asked if I was sure someone was chasing me. I said yes. I was absolutely sure that it was the two old people that lived there. He informed me that the people that lived there, the people in the chairs, have been dead for quite some time. I asked what the smell in the basement was, and he said there was another body down there. Backup showed up. I gave them my statement and explained how I'd been coming there every day for months and months to feed the cats. I told them to call Ben, the homeowner's son. I gave them the number, and it was disconnected. I found out a few days later that the body in the basement was Ben. What I don't get is who's been paying me. I thought it was a prank at first, just a belated April Fool's joke from one of my buddies. I never thought for a second that it could have spiraled into the horrifying mess I found myself in. The thick stone ceiling above me has made calling the cops impossible, but I think I have just enough signal to get this out to the internet, my note in a bottle, if you will. There are no clocks here, but as far as I can tell, this all started a few hours ago. I sat hunched over my computer desk, squinting at the harsh blue light of my monitor. I was going through my nightly ritual of scanning through Craigslist for any good deals. I was moments away from powering the computer down and giving my tired brain a break when I saw it. The image was so surreal, it took me a moment to figure out what I was looking at. There, nestled between a vintage typewriter and a dusty old sofa, was a picture of me. The title was my full name, and the price was listed at $1,500. I mentally went through all of my friends and family, trying to figure out who would do something like this, but came up empty-handed. I saw there were more pictures and went to scroll through them, but hesitated. I was afraid that IDB met with fuzzy Polaroids of me taken from behind bushes and through windows. However, as I scrolled through the images, I realized I recognized each one. I'd taken them. They were all from my Facebook feed. A selfie I'd taken with some friends at a bar. A picture of me at the beach with my girlfriend. I felt my heart rate begin to quicken. My Facebook was set to private, and I never friended anyone I didn't know. How had these pictures gotten onto the internet? I clicked the listing and began anxiously reading the description. Product is a 26-year-old Caucasian male. It is 237 pounds and 5 feet 8. It consumes approximately 2,200 calories per day. I raised an eyebrow at that last line. What would anyone want with that information? It went on to describe everything I'd eaten for the past 2 weeks in meticulous detail. Everything from the McGriddle I'd had on my way to work to the Snickers I'd munched on today after dinner. They even knew about my ADD medication. I nervously glanced around my house, suddenly feeling naked and vulnerable. Where were they getting this information? How long had they been keeping tabs on me? Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw a short message at the end of the post that made my skin crawl. Product is unathletic and should be easily collected by 2 to 3 people. Bringing weapons are suggested but not needed. Collected. Any hope of this being a joke was beginning to evaporate. How many people had seen the listing by now? What kinds of people go searching for a listing like this at all? Then I had a thought that made me bring a hand to my mouth. Did this page have my address listed? Seemed terrifyingly possible. The listing had seemingly every other detail about me. Why not that? My eyes scanned the web page until I found a message that explained everything. Address for $1,500. Email me if interested. It made a sick sort of sense. They'd found a way to monetize their stalking. Why let such great talent go to waste, right? I wondered how many other people he'd done this to. How many home invasions and robberies and abductions he'd helped facilitate just for a few $1,000. I immediately flagged the post, hoping to have it taken down. However, I quickly realized it would take hours, maybe even days, for the moderators at Craigslist to get to it. I didn't have that time to spare. My fingers flew across the keyboard, searching Google for some way to get a hold of the people at Craigslist. But in the end, all I could find was a generic contact form. Getting desperate, I opened my email to try one last gambit. I plugged in the seller's address, a random string of numbers and letters, and typed out a desperate plea to take down the listing, offering 5 times the original price. Waiting for a response was torture. I passed the time by running around my house, locking all of the doors and windows. I also turned out all of the lights to make it look like no one was home. I knew, realistically, the odds of some psycho seeing the post was slim. But the internet was a big place, and I didn't want to take any chances. I was so on edge that by the time I heard the ding of the email notification, my heart practically jumped out of my chest. Regret to inform you that the information has already been purchased. I buried my head in my hands. I had been too late. How long ago had it been bought? 10 minutes ago? An hour a day? My line of thought was broken when the crackle of wheels on gravel brought my attention to the window. I pulled the curtains aside and peered out into the night, careful to reveal as little of myself as possible. A black SUV was pulling into my driveway, its occupants hidden behind a dark window. I told myself everything was fine, that they were just doing a 3-point turn and would be gone any minute. Another pause, then footsteps thundering straight toward me. My mind raced momentarily, and then it hit me. The one who had posted the listing hadn't been stalking me. They had been living with me. Lexi was the one who'd posted it, and she'd just told them exactly where I was. I burst out of the pantry and made a break for the door, just as the 2 men rounded the corner behind me. I wanted to look back, but fought the urge. If I looked back, I'd get nervous, and if I got nervous, I'd stumble, and if I stumbled, they'd de-drag me into their car and do God knows what. I flung open the back door and ran into the cool, damp air. However, before I could make a break for it, one of them caught me by the hood, snapping my neck back. The fabric tightened around my throat like a snake, making it hard to breathe. I blindly threw an elbow behind me, and it connected with his ribs. The man cried out in pain, and I felt his grip loosen by just a fraction. A fraction was all I needed. I tucked in my chin, drew in my arms, and wriggled out of the hoodie, falling to the wet earth on hands and knees. I made a mad dash for the tree line. As I ran, I heard angry shouts from behind me. "Just shoot! Damn thing is jammed! Oh, gimme that!" A loud pop rang out in the night, and something whizzed past my ear. I wondered what they'd shot at me. The sound was too quiet to be a gun. A quick glance behind me revealed one of the men was holding what looked like a small, lightweight sniper rifle. It was green with a strange white chamber at the bottom. What the hell is that thing? The man shoved something inside, clicked it back, and took aim. Pop. Fear shot through me like a bolt of electricity. I jerked my body out of the way just in time for something to fly past me and bury itself in a nearby tree. It was a dart. They were shooting at me with a tranquilizer gun, like I was a wild animal. The tree line was about 40 feet away now. My lungs felt like they were full of bees, but I kept running anyway, knowing if I slowed even a fraction, they'd catch me. I did my best to avoid the darts, diving out of the way whenever I heard one of those sickening pops, but eventually my luck ran out. Just as I reached the tree line, ready to disappear behind the dense foliage, I felt a red-hot sting in my back. Exhaustion began flooding my body, making my movements slow and sluggish. The world spun around me, and soon I found myself on the forest floor. My memories of what happened next are jagged and frayed. The click of a trunk, the jangle of chains. When I finally came to my senses, I found myself on a damp concrete floor, bathed in darkness, shivering from the biting cold. The only noise breaking the eerie silence were the heavy thuds of footsteps over my head. They left me my phone, maybe to keep me from going crazy, maybe to taunt me. To ensure I can't ask for help, they've somehow blocked all posting or messaging features, at least almost all of them. I marched through a dense forest, morning light filtering through snow-covered branches. My hands were zip-tied behind me, the rough hand of one of my kidnappers on my shoulder, urging me forward. One of my captors, a bald man with emerald eyes, had opened the basement door one day, and said it was time to go. He'd shoved me in the trunk, and a few cramped, uncomfortable hours later, I found myself here in the countryside. I was being led to a small cottage, purple flowers growing out front, a river running behind it. It was a far cry from the abandoned industrial building I had imagined, but still didn't do much to calm my nerves. It was like entering a room with a picture frame askew. Though I knew something was wrong, I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. The two men ascended the steps and held open the door, a black chasm that even the morning sun couldn't illuminate. My fevered mind conjured up a plethora of horrors waiting inside for me. They looked at me expectantly, but I didn't move, icy fear freezing me where I stood. One of them, the same bald man from earlier, grabbed my collar and dragged me inside. Although the room was dark, enough sunlight filtered in through the drawn curtains for me to make out some rough shapes. A sofa here, an armchair there. The lack of any obvious threat helped me to relax, but only slightly. The bald man flicked on the light switch, but nothing happened. After a few more useless clicks, he growled and turned to go outside. Damn power's out again. Tie him down and then come out here and help me. The other man, a lanky fellow with small beady eyes, zip-tied me to a nearby radiator and left to join his partner, shutting the door behind him and leaving me in darkness. That's when I noticed it. Opposite the room from me was a figure. It sat on one of the couches, arm outstretched toward the TV holding what could only be a remote. It was far too still to be a person, but that didn't leave many other options. Was it a statue? A mannequin? Mannequin seemed to fit. It was the only solution that explained the unnatural stillness of the thing. My eyes were beginning to adjust to the darkness by this point, and I realized that mannequins were everywhere. Two stood in the center of the room, holding each other like they were in the middle of a slow dance. Another one sat at a dining table just a few feet away, holding a fork between its fingers, raised to its lips as if to take a bite. Wait a second. Fingers. Did mannequins have ... click? Light suddenly exploded into the room, blinding me momentarily. I opened my eyes to see the grisly sight before me. Every single mannequin was a person. Their pale, thin bodies were held up by wires that stretched to the ceiling like the strings of a marionette. Their dull, vacant eyes lead me to think they were dead, but after studying them closely I realized they were breathing, albeit shallowly. The man watching TV slumped on his couch, slowly blinking every few seconds. The hand that held the remote was a bluish-gray from the cut-off circulation. I turned my head to the figure who I had seen sitting at the table and had to slap a hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. The girl was slim, gaunt even, and barely out of her teens. Her big hazel eyes sunk deep in their sockets, lifelessly stared at the plate of fake food in front of her. My heart ached for her and I strained against my bindings to get closer. I whispered, "Can you hear me?" The girl did. She didn't show any signs of it. I realized that everyone here must have been drugged somehow. Listen, my name's Robbie. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? Don't worry. Even as I said the words, I knew they were a lie. I tugged against my restraints, but they didn't even budge. I was about to try kicking the radiator when I heard the door open behind me. Before I could turn around, red-hot pain exploded into my head. I collapsed backward, blood leaking from my forehead, and stared up at my attacker. An old man loomed above me, his weathered face scowling down at me. "Down, boy," he said. "Can't have you riling everyone up." He wore a sharp white suit and held a cane, now bloody with what I assumed was my blood. He removed a handkerchief from his pocket and began slowly cleaning it. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was like cold silk. "I'm a ... curator of sorts. I collect things." Before I could ask another question, he grabbed me by the mouth and pulled me in closer, studying my face the way a lion eyes a zebra. "Yes," he mumbled. "This is excellent." I tried to pull away, but he held my face like a clamp. The bald man entered through the open door, his lanky partner trailing behind him. He nodded at me proudly. "Everything's just as you asked," he said. The old man, the curator, gave no response at first. He just continued to examine my face, nodding and mumbling intermittently. "Yes, eyes are good, skin is good. Hair's all wrong, but that can be fixed." Seemingly pleased, he released my face and stood up. "Yes, this is very good. You'll receive your money within a few hours. I'll contact you when I have another ... request." My heart sank as I realized what he'd just said. Not only would I not be able to help the girl, but I'd soon be joining her. I'd be strung up and put on display like some sort of sick art exhibit. I buried my head in my hands, hiding from the insanity of it all. I could not spend the rest of my life here. Could not. Then the curator seemed to notice something. Wait a second. He leaned down and looked me up and down. Stand up, boy, and let me get a good look at you. The tall man seemed to visibly tense at this, as if afraid of what the old man would find. The curator stared at me, his wrinkled face creasing with disgust.
He's too short.
The bold man spoke up. It's only by a few inches. What difference could it make? What difference could it make? Look around you, he asked, gesturing at the human puppets that surrounded us. Everything is ... precise. If I ask for someone who's 5'8", then that's what I expect. He studied their faces and seemed to realize something. You two didn't get him from that girl, did you? That girl, my heart sank as I realized they were talking about Lexi. Baldy spoke up. Her listings are usually solid. Just nothing, he snapped. Tired of dealing with your laziness. Get me another one. And he better be the right size this time. The old man turned away from us and walked toward the door, his cane clopping on the polished floor. Baldy jabbed a meaty thumb at me. And what about him? Get rid of him. I froze, fear paralyzing my mind. They were going to let me go, right? I hadn't the slightest clue who these people were. They could just dump me back at my house, and I could rat them out even if I wanted to. However, the stony look the men had when they turned to face me shattered any illusions of making it out alive. The bald man spoke to his partner in a low voice. In the car. This won't be long, the tall man reluctantly obeyed, disappearing out the door and leaving me with my executioner. He cut me from the radiator and began dragging me, kicking and screaming, toward the door. I poured every ounce of strength I had into resisting, punching and clawing like a wild animal, hysteria splintering my mind. Please don't do this. I won't say anything, I swear. My face was streaked with tears and the words came spilling from my mouth like a toddler. As I fought, I caught sight of the girl from earlier still sitting at her table. To my surprise, a bit of the life seemed to have returned to her eyes, and she was staring at me intently. She looked between me and the floor, and I realized she'd dropped something. Although the food in front of her wasn't real, the silverware was. She'd managed to knock a steak knife to the floor just a few feet away from me. I squeezed my eyes shut and pulled from the men with all the strength I could, arm outstretched to the knife. My hand was just half a foot away, then just a few inches. The man noticed what I was trying to do and tried to grab it first, but it was too late. I scooped up the knife and plunged it deep into his stomach, warm blood spilling onto my hand. He released his grip, and I stumbled to my feet, sprinting out the door on shaky legs. I emerged onto the deck and immediately caught sight of the curator, walking to his car. He turned and locked eyes with me. His face held confusion before turning to an icy rage that made my heart skip. He reached under his suit and retrieved a silver pistol, aiming it at me. I dove to the side as a deafening bang rang out, almost shattering my eardrums. I dashed around the corner as 2 more shots went off. I ran blindly toward the river, knowing it was my only hope of escape. I dove in, the frigid water chilling me to the bone. As the current carried me away, I saw the curator running toward me, pistol in hand, eyes burning embers of rage. Not wanting to hold his gaze, I turned around just in time to see a large rock that protruded from the water. I tried to swim out of its path, but the current was too strong. Pain crashed through my head, and then everything went black. The rest was told to me by my nurse. She says a few good Samaritans found me, washed up under a bridge, and rushed me to the hospital. I told the police everything, but they were unable to locate the cabin. The river I'd been found in had dozens of smaller ones feeding into it at different points, and it was impossible to tell which one I'd come from, or how long I'd been floating. They say I should be happy I escaped, but that doesn't matter. Lexi, if that's even her real name, is still at large, selling people's information online. The girl who saved me is still strung up in that cabin. And somewhere out there, the curator is looking for the newest addition to his collection. I have a lot going on in my life. I'm currently 22 years old, and I'm completing my Master S in computer science in a college located in a major city in the United States. It isn't too bad. I thoroughly enjoy computer science, and I take night classes. So, I can still retain my underpaid day job as an IT guy for a small startup near my school. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate. Despite the somewhat expensive living prices in this area, I love the neighborhood and the people. Honestly, for a guy in his 20s who came from no money, I was doing pretty well. I was in a pretty ideal situation. That is, up until last week. Last week, my roommate moved out on me without much notice. He told me he got an offer for a job in another city across the United States, and that he'd already sold his half of the furniture in Craigslist that morning. This was all through text, by the way. By the time I came home from my night classes, his room was pretty much empty, and he wasn't responding to my angry texts anymore. That put me in a severe bind. I made okay money as an IT guy. But part of the reason I was getting my Master S was because I knew it would pay off when my degree became more valuable, and I could work for bigger companies. After all, I had an unnecessarily large amount of student loans to pay off for my undergraduate degree on top of the price of achieving my Master S and increasing rent. But tuition money and rising rent prices weren't even the biggest issues. You might wonder, why doesn't he just move into a 1-bedroom, or even a studio by himself? After all, I'm a guy who likes my privacy, and living in a 1-bedroom wouldn't have been so bad. To answer your question, I would have moved into a smaller space. If I didn't have a crazy online stalker, I was busy trying to get a restraining order against. Turns out it's hard to get a restraining order if you know the real name of the person you're trying to file one against. You see, I used to play a popular online video game back in high school where you could get married with other players to boost stats. And this one girl took our in-game marriage way too seriously. She thought we were actually married. She would send me messages that were extremely creepy and a violation of my privacy, including asking for nudes and sending her own. I was very disturbed. Even though I told her I wasn't interested, that I was gay, and I only married her for boosted stats, she continued to press on with the creepiness. I brushed her off as an overzealous gamer girl and eventually stopped playing the game entirely. But then she started finding personal information of mine online, like my private Facebook, Twitter, and phone number, and it eventually escalated to finding where I lived. She started sending threats against me and my family. Things got creepy, and I had to file a report against her. She's been laying low for a while, but you can't blame a guy for being cautious. After all, I moved a total of 3 times since she first found my address, and she managed to find me every time. So yeah, a lot's going on in my life. You could say I had a streak of bad luck. I honestly hoped it was just mere bad luck and not a sign of something worse. Balancing my masters, my job, and warding off a crazy stalker has not been easy. But now I had to find a new roommate to fulfill what's left of my lease. I ended up posting an offer on Craigslist a few hours ago, offering interviews for a new potential roommate. I had 3 people respond to my offer total, and all of them were memorable in their own right. The first guy's name was Daniel. He was a normal, plain, and average guy working on his PhD in chemistry, which was everything I wanted in a roommate. I asked him all the standard questions. How often did he clean? What times would he generally be home if he smoked? Etc. He had all the right answers, the perfect demeanor, and seemed like a normal person overall. After everything I've been through, I would have thoroughly appreciated some hint of normalcy and constance in my life. Overall, Daniel seemed pretty promising, and I honestly would have just gone with this guy if it weren't for the fact that I had 2 more interviewees right after him. I didn't want to blow off the other 2 interviewees and wanted to give them a fair chance. So I told Daniel I'd call him back within a day or 2, and we left on good terms. Daniel was certainly a compelling choice. The second guy's name was Hector. Hector was interesting, if I were to be polite, and a complete nut job, if I were to be frankly honest. When he walked in the room, I didn't suspect anything at first. He also seemed pretty average, tall, tan, wavy black hair, really bad dark circles. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, but otherwise he looked pretty normal. But then he opened his mouth, and I knew I had to end this interview quickly. "Hi, thanks for coming to the interview. You're Hector," I said, closing the door. I led him to the living room. "Yeah, nice to meet you." Hector flopped down in the seat I offered him, seemingly admiring the armchair I got from a garage sale a long time ago. "This is a really nice place. Reminds me of my own room back down under. Down under." "Oh, so you're from Australia?" I was surprised. He didn't have an Australian accent that I could detect. "No, I'm from hell," Hector replied casually. I cocked my head in curiosity. Hell, huh? Is that a city in Australia? I asked. I never heard of a city named Hell personally, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. Hector leaned forward in his chair, resting his elbows on his knees. No. Hell. Jano. Burning fires. Scorching heat. Where the souls of the condemned go to get tortured for all eternity? Sounds like Australia to me. I tried laughing it off. Hector didn't look so amused. No, man. I'm a demon. Like a demon. Like games? Or sports? Or something? No. Like a demon. I included it in my application. I remembered reading that name. Hector. Occupation. Unemployed demon. Previous residence. The sixth gate of hell. I thought he just had an odd sense of humor. I thought you were joking, I said after a brief pause. Yeah, so I have a funny story for you. I got kicked out of my place recently for refusing to eat humans. They got offended and said I was being difficult and not following the customs of our kind or whatever. But I'm honestly just tired of eating humans, and I want to try new things. There are so many different things to eat in this world, and you honestly get sick of eating humans after a couple of centuries. Uh-huh. You don't believe me? Hector remarked, sitting back in his chair. No one does. You humans need to open up your minds more. Is this some sort of prank? Am I on camera?
Oh.
I looked around the room to see if there were any camera crews waiting to jump in at the right gotcha moment. No, I can promise this isn't a trick of any kind, he replied. I glanced at the clock. Unfortunately, there was still a lot of time before the next person came in, so I decided to humor Hector for what it was worth. At the very least, when this was over, I could tweet about having the weirdest person come into for an interview and earn some internet points for that. Okay? Let's say you really are a... I made some vague hand gestures. Demon? Hector finishes. Yeah, a demon. Why would you want to live here, of all places? Well, when I was kicked out of hell, I wasn't given much. I left with only the clothes on my back, so I had to pawn off a gold watch I stole from a rich guy in the 1900s and got a lot of money for that. Don't worry, though. I'm confident that I can find a job within a month of living here for sure. At least I think I can. And you were kicked out because you refused to eat humans. Yup, Hector said, popping the pea. You really don't eat humans? Then are you like the equivalent of a demon vegan or something? I asked cautiously. Not exactly. I still eat humans when I have to. Just not a picky eater. Most demons are what you'd call elitist and consider human souls gourmet and expensive. Just because it's gotten really hard to eradicate you lot. Your kind is getting smart. It was definitely easier to eat humans when they didn't tea-wash their hands, and all it took was the plague to eradicate half of the population. He replied, crossing his legs and folding his hands over its lap. So then, what do you eat? I probed. Same things as you. Chicken, pork, the occasional medium-rare steak when I can afford it, but I consume the souls. Their other bits are tasty too. Blood's always better fresh, and bones have a surprisingly good amount of soul in them. Here's a secret. When you're sucking on the marrow, that's their soul, not just bone marrow. He grinned. That's what gives it so much flavor. Wow, that's, dark. I grimaced, looking up at the clock behind Hector. It was in tea anywhere near the time for the second interview, but this was clearly headed nowhere from the start. I eat chickens for their souls, you eat them for their physical flavor. What's the difference? Hector asked. I paused for a second. It was almost as if he had a point. But you used to eat humans, I countered, ultimately unconvinced. And you used to like Nickelback unironically. Maybe you still do. Hector motioned to my signed Nickelback poster on the wall adjacent to him. I felt my face getting red. I knew I should have hidden that before the interviewees came in. I was slightly offended that he would call me out like that. Point is, a few years can drastically change you humans. And for us demons, a few centuries can change us too. Why do you all think we're the same as we've been since the 1500s? We're just like you guys, sort of. Okay, so if you're a demon, why would you want to be in such a small room? Couldn't you find somewhere else? Somewhere better and not as ... cramped? Shouldn't you be able to, I don't know, conjure up some money with your demonic magic or whatever? Easy. Rent's cheaper here, and I don't need a lot of room. We demons aren't rich. We don't all use what you call magic, and we aren't omnipotent either. I can't just make money out of nothing, though it'd be helpful. Hector droned. Besides, I love this part of the city. So much culture, So much fried chicken. I really, really love fried chicken. Don't we all? I said. Besides, I feel like you need me as much as I need this. I stiffened. What do you mean? Like you're Finn Conway. Working on a master's has had a stalker for a while now. If you ask me, your stalker's pretty insane and she's still out there somewhere. I can keep her away from you if you let me live here. I felt my blood run cold. How did he know all this? I instantly felt a wave of discomfort crash over me. I mean, that's what I got from your Twitter account anyway. Should really make it private. Everyone can see your information, he mentioned, noticing my discomfort. I relaxed visibly, but it still rubbed me the wrong way that he knew so much about me, and I knew nothing about him, except for the fact that he claimed he was a demon. This was the point where I realized I should cut the interview short. Listen, sorry to cut this short, but the next interviewer should arrive any minute now, and I don't want to keep him or her waiting. I think you should leave. I'd entertained him long enough. This weird demon roleplay of his was going way too far, and I wasn't interested. I had enough craziness in my life from having to deal with a stalker. I couldn't deal with a delusional roommate. Plus, him knowing my whole life story from Twitter was a little too personal for my comfort. I got up from my seat hastily and reached over to shake Hector's hand to end this, before it went on for too long. It was cold to the touch, but what was colder was the unexplainable pang in my chest when I saw Hector's downfallen expression. Oh, okay. When do you think I'll hear back? He asked. I rubbed the back of my neck, a bad nervous habit. Soon, probably a couple of days. I'll call you about it, I lied. I wasn't planning on calling him back, and he probably knew it. Even if his story were true, I wouldn't want to live with a former man-eating demon who claimed to be on a chicken-soul diet. But it wasn't true. Demons weren't real. This man had clearly lost his marbles, and I didn't need a crazy roommate on top of everything else on my plate. All right, cool. Hector got up from his seat, looking dejected. I walked him to the door, and before I closed the door, he spoke up. Listen, I really need this. If there's anything else you need, more rent, more anything, just ... let me know. I nodded, and he gave a sheepish smile before walking off into the hallway. I closed the door, locked it, and slumped back in my seat, hoping the third guy wasn't a weird person like Hector was. I really needed to get better security and be more careful about posting my problems on Twitter. The third person never ended up showing up, but I couldn't wait forever. I decided to contact Daniel when I got back from my night classes about the offer. But when I got back from my night classes, I noticed something was terribly off. My door was unlocked, but I knew for a fact that I locked it when I left.
Ow.
I double-checked these kinds of things all the time, being the neurotic person that I was.
Ow.
I debated calling the police, when I felt something cold poke my back, and a chilling voice say, "Go on in. What are you waiting for?" I froze up and turned my head to see a small, skinny woman in a wedding dress and messy, matted, greasy hair with bad makeup pointing a gun in my direction. "Who are you?" "Oh, don't act like you don't know. Merpenet Butter 26, she grinned, revealing teeth that looked like they hadn't been brushed in a while. I instantly knew where this was going and who this was. Only one person would refer to me as my shitty username from that stupid game years ago. My stalker had found where I lived again, and this time she was taking things to a whole new level. Or should I say, my darling husband. Her hand caressed my body, and I felt shivers running down my spine. If she hadn't had a gun, I would have been able to easily turn the tables on her. She was easily a head shorter than me. "How the fuck did you find where I live?" I grit my teeth and looked around for security cameras, hoping they'd pick up on this very illegal activity going on. "Don't bother. I already set all the cameras on loop, and no one comes home this late but you. Now, unless you want me to shoot your pretty little brains out, I suggest you go inside." She pushed the gun into my back forcefully, and I quickly turned the knob to my door and went inside. The apartment was dark and cold. My interior was decked out in candles shaped into a huge heart with rose petals scattered around, and a chair in the middle of the heart of candles, which were the only source of illumination besides the lights from the buildings outside the window. Under the chair was an intricate-looking summoning circle, the design of which I recognized from the game. In-game, that summoning circle would have summoned a fae from Askenhelm, a fictional land, who ordained your marriage in the name of magic and goodness, and made it official. "My stalker was really trying to marry us like how it was done in the game," she ordered. I did as I was told, and she brought duct tape from under her dress to wrap my limbs around the chair. She then went to the kitchen, humming a tuneless song. Listen, I don't know what you want or how you got here. I don't know how the fuck you managed to fly under security personnel. You know what? You're always so mean, Finn, she cut me off. You're always playing so hard to get, always. Her deranged voice shut me up quickly. I understand, though. I would want my future husband to prove their worth to me, too. But we're together now, and nothing can get in our way this time. Not the computer screen, not the cops. Amy and Finn, partners in crime, lovers forever. Finally married under the gracious fairies of Asgenhelm like fate dictated it to be. This is how it should have been from the start. So that's her name, Amy. She brought over 2 glasses of a dark red liquid from the kitchen on a silver platter that I didn't know I had. Drink this, she cooed. I turned my head away from her. Fuck no. Drink it now, Amy. Its personality went from blissful happiness to sharp and threatening as she grabbed my head and shoved the glass in my mouth. I choked and tried to resist drinking any of the substance, but a mouthful managed to go down my throat. It was an extremely bitter concoction of wine and something else that I didn't want to think about. Amy took dainty sips of the wine. Meanwhile, I started feeling sweaty, and my vision started to go hazy. She clearly drugged whatever this was. The blood oath has finally been fulfilled, Amy said excitedly. I wanted to throw up. This crazy bitch really mixed her own blood into the drink. She kneeled below me. Her stench made me want to puke. We've been married online, but I was thinking, why not get married in real life in the eyes of God himself? But obviously God didn't want us together, so I had to turn to the fairies instead. They can marry us. It wouldn't stop something so lovely and pure like this. With that, Amy poured the rest of the concoction under my chair and started laughing. I've been waiting for this for months, for weeks, for days. I've been following you, you know? You really let your guard down, but I find that so adorable about you. When I saw that you posted a Craigslist offer looking for a roommate, I just had to make sure that it was you, and it was. So that's how she found me. My stupid Craigslist ad. It just registered to me that she might have been the 3rd interviewee who never showed up. And in that time, she must have scouted out the area to plan this shit. For someone who was in the computer science field, I had really let my cybersecurity guard down, and it led to my undoing. I was entirely too careless. I groaned. My head began to pound, and my vision became even blurrier. She caressed my hands and began to put a ring on my finger. The potion I put in the love wine brings us both to the plane of the fairies so they can marry us, she said. Her words felt so weirdly distant. The ring was placed on my finger, secure and tight. She mounted my lap and hugged me, whispering things into my ear, and I felt so disgusted that I just wanted to disappear. And now, it's official. We're married. Don't you see the fairy, Finn? The fairy's right behind you, Amy paused, realizing what she had said. She scrambled to her feet. I looked up at her, and she looked as if she saw a ghost. We'll wait, she mumbled. She backed up a few steps. I looked at her feet, unable to focus properly. The lighting from the buildings behind me casted the shadow of a big bird. Who's there? Who are you? Amy pointed the gun in my direction, and I couldn't even physically flinch from the drugs. I figured she was hallucinating or something, but whatever she was seeing seemed pretty real and terrifying. I'm his roommate. Who are you? The voice replied. I recognized that voice. Hector.
Hector.
In my haze, I managed to make out his words clearly. I wondered how he's managed to walk into my room since the door was blocked by Amy, and both of us would have seen him come inside. Being that my back was facing the balcony, I assumed that was the only possible way he got in. But how did he get all the way up to the 13th floor without anyone noticing him? Better yet, how was his timing so good? I'm his wife, asshole, Amy spat. For some reason, I don't believe you. Hector deadpanned. Neither of you are what either of you just claimed yourselves to be, I thought to myself. I didn't dare say it out loud because I was in a very tight space. It doesn't matter what you believe. You're getting in the way of our marriage, and no one can stop us. Amy sneered. How the fuck did you get in here? You should have really looked up that symbol before you drew it. It kind of opens a portal from my world to yours. When you poured blood over it, it activated the portal. Does that explain things? I began turning my head towards Hector, only to be stopped by his firm grip on my shoulder. "Don't turn around," he ordered. Being as I wasn't exactly in a position to argue, I complied. Also, the hand on my shoulder was too large, long, gnarled, and sharp to belong to a human being. So that alone was enough to convince me. My head lazily lolled back to face Amy, who was still pointing the gun. Rocking side to side on the balls of her feet and trying to put up the brave front she had a few minutes ago. "Halloween's not coming for another year, buddy. I don't know how you got up here in that weird demon. Furry, get up. But you're definitely not leaving this alive. I'm gonna fucking kill you." Amy's remarks truly made me wonder what she was seeing and what I was missing out on. "Hey, close your eyes and keep it shut until I say otherwise," he whispered gently. He enclosed his overgrown hands over my field of vision. Petrified and drugged to high heaven, I did what I was told to do and shut my eyes. "I have a gun, and I know how to use it. Stay away from me. I fucking mean it. If you don't, I'll shoot." Amy's voice was faltering. From her tone, she clearly didn't know how to use a gun, and was planning on actually using it. These were all empty threats, at least. I hoped they were. "And this is why you guys need better gun control." I heard Hector's lazy drawl as he stepped forward. For some reason, his footsteps grew heavier, and his voice boomed all around even more. I also heard Amy's quivers turn to full-out whimpers and desperate screams to stay the fuck away. I felt the room settle to a chill as the trigger was pulled and the shot rang. It was a deafening bang and an even more deafening silence afterwards. I squeezed my eyes shut, letting a wail of grief leave my throat, not wanting to witness what had happened. I heard Amy's manic giggles as she shot 4 more times, each shot more deafening than the last. I swore I could hear the bullets bursting through Hector's body. I felt tears burn my eyeballs as I pleaded for her to stop. "Amy, stop, I'm begging you. I've done enough," was all I could manage to choke out as I shook my head in shock and disbelief. Still shutting my eyes, I prayed Hector was still alive despite the 4 gunshots that I heard, knowing it was highly unlikely. I felt responsible for this mess, and I had somehow managed to drag him into it, even though it was none of his business. Now he was probably dead. It was all my fault. "It's too late." I told it to stay away. Thought it could be a hero or something. What a joke. "And you, Finn, I warned you. I fucking warned you. And you're next. You know why? Don't fucking shake your head. You know why? It's because you lied to me and you didn't return my loaf." Her crazed raves were cut off abruptly by the sudden sounds of her choking. Wait, I heard more choking, some cracks and screams. "What's happening?" I yelled. I was tempted to open my eyes, but remembering Hector's words kept me from doing so. "Stop. I'm sorry, please let me." I flinched as I heard Amy's threats abruptly change to pleas for her life. Her pleas became increasingly desperate as air escaped her lungs. Whatever was happening to her definitely wasn't something I wanted to see with my own eyes. My imagination did enough. She seemed to be flailing and gurgling, before I heard a loud and sickening crunch, and everything went silent again. I held my breath. Silence. Bewildering silence filled the room. I heard the quiet hiss of smoke in the distance, and smelled what I could only describe as burning rubber. "You can open your eyes now," Hector said softly. I knew he had somehow survived the 4 gunshots and managed to quell Amy's insanity. "I don't know if I want to," I blurted. "Seriously, it's fine," Hector insisted. I opened my eyes. In the darkness, I was surprised to see that Hector looked like the same Hector I saw earlier this afternoon, and Amy was nowhere to be seen. I expected to see something other than Hector standing there, but he defied my expectations. With the dim lighting coming from the buildings across from mine, Hector's silhouette looked almost ethereal as he hunched over slightly over where Amy once stood. There was blood all over his button-down, dripping down his mouth, onto his hands, but no body to show for it, is she? "She won't be bothering you again, Hector," cut me off. This is going to be a bitch to clean. He tugged at his clothes, grimacing at the blood. I was actually glad he didn't include anything else. I was exactly in the right state of mind to handle what I thought was a murder that just occurred in my own house. "Did you?" "Kill her. Not exactly. Just sent her soul where it belonged, right here." He pat his stomach for good measure. I grimaced. She didn't taste that good. Don't know what she was thinking. Bullets don't really work on guys like me. But I guess she couldn't have known that, I'm sure. "Told you I was a demon. No one ever believes me. You can't blame me. It all sounds like crazy talk. I don't even know if this is real right now. I could be hallucinating everything. Well, she roofied you to oblivion, so I don't blame you. You're probably seeing shit you shouldn't be seeing on top of all this, but it's real. You don't have to digest all this now, though. Speaking of digestion, she really ruined my diet. I didn't want to eat her, but it looked like I had no choice. Hector seemed to be talking to no one in particular, as he went over to the kitchen to wash his hands. I stayed still in the chair, trying to come up with the right words to say. Listen, I said, as Hector approached me with a scissor. I was probably slurring my words, but I hoped I was still coherent enough to make sense. I know we started off, not exactly on the right foot, but I wanted to know if you were still interested in the offer. You really saved me from a tight bind just now, and I feel like it's the least I can do. Hector shrugged. I don't know. Felt pretty offended earlier when you just, kicked me out. I don't like being rejected. I had nothing to say to that. Hector glanced up at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. If you throw in some fried chicken every Friday, I might consider it. I blinked. Sure. Fried chicken every Friday. Not a problem. And leniency on the rent. I'll get it in, but it might not be monthly. I don't really have a job yet. I really shouldn't have been making deals while I wasn't sober, but it sounded pretty compelling at the time, and he did save my life. So I agreed anyway. Yeah, lenient rent. Got it. And no nickelback. Their music makes me want to kill myself, and I'm immortal, so I can't even do that. I nodded blindly. Hector grinned as he began to cut the duct tape from my limbs. Sounds like a deal, roomie. Amy's body was never found, but police found a bunch of Rohypnol and GHB in her house, as well as bullets for an unregistered handgun, which was missing entirely from the scene of the crime. When I woke up, I found myself trying to recollect the events with a huge headache. The Rohypnol and GHB in her house were used to roofie me into complacency. The police briefly questioned me after finding her deranged messages to me and neighbor complaints about screams, but did not suspect me at all, as it was clear. Amy had a history of stalking guys online, and she had finally snapped. Last I heard, they chalked it up to a disappearance and put out a search for her, but I know they'll never be able to find her.